There is need for the clergy to acknowledge the huge role they play in keeping the government in check, both in Kenya and in Uganda. The Ugandan lawmaker earlier in the day exclusively spoke to EBN TV on the backdrop of a rigorous conversation about the clergy who have openly called out the Kenyan government. Dr. Abed Bwanika also notes the sharp contrast between activism in Kenya and Uganda, saying the 36-year presidency of Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni has also hindered the freedom of expression in Uganda. Let's talk about the clergy in Uganda, for that matter, who are our neighbors. Where would you say things are at the moment for the men of cloth in Uganda in terms of also really taking up that role as the first estate and just also bringing out their voice and talking about issues that are affecting Ugandans?
The clergy everywhere apart from Uganda, they are supposed to be the voice for the communities in terms of the shared values.
Yes.
They are values that bring the nation together. They are also important commitments that governments make, especially if it is a democracy. So the clergy is expected to voice out when a government is not moving in the right direction. Mm-hmm. But not only when they are not moving in the right direction, they are also supposed to give guidance in terms of directions. And that's what clergy is all about when you interface with politics. Mm-hmm. But in many cases, you'll find our Ugandan case is completely a different one.
Yes.
We are talking about a government president that has been in power the last 39 years. Mm-hmm. So the handling is completely different, but they are doing their best. They have space on radio, space on TV, and many times they interface with the government. And you're going to have a national prayer breakfast,
yes, where
the religious leaders, the clergy go in, and they have opportunity to air out what they think. Their voices on behalf of the people of Uganda. They do that. We see them very active when it is electioneering year.
Yeah.
They tend to guide their communities because they are the prefects for these communities. And I think this has been a very, very important input from the clergy, from churches, from the Muslim community, guiding their communities where to go in terms of making decisions. And I think they have done a huge contribution.
Right. Have we seen instances where the government pushes back on the clergy and there's sort of a line drawn on things you can talk about as a church and things you're absolutely not allowed to talk about as a church?
Yes, the governments all over the world, and including Uganda, when they see the clergy trying to be very firm, especially on issues that are very controversial, they will tend to draw lines, claiming that politics is their domain as politicians and the clergy should operate from church. But we have seen instances where the clergy is insisting because there is no clear line between the politics and whatever happens within the churches. So many times when they get firm, the government will listen. They will listen. The government knows that, and the politicians, not only those who are in government, but every politician knows that you must have good relationship with this clergy because they have the people, they have the population, and they meet them very often. So in your political dynamics, you must relate well. So on the African continent, the faith, the church, they're still anchored in terms of politics. They can still counsel the politician, and I think it is a good thing for us on the African continent. Very delicate area where the faith, the leaders of faith, go in and air out in black and white what they think is a direction, and then after some time things don't go the right way. I think it is a role of the clergy to direct and cancel their congregations. But we must be very guarded because politics is another not very easy space. So naming the candidates, the preferred candidates, would not be the best thing.
Some of the differences that you would say you've really noted in terms of our right to picket and the right of Ugandans to picket and demonstrate?
Of course, I was watching and I was interested like any other Ugandan. Here, in terms of freedoms to go on the street and to do what you want to do, I think there are more freedoms in Kenya, not in Uganda. If what happened here was in Uganda, it would have been a catastrophe. What I didn't like, though, in Kenya is the destruction of the infrastructure. I saw what people are doing in terms of burning down buildings, going to parliament, and we should never do that. We should have the freedom to express ourselves, protest, and say what we want. But this infrastructure is a huge investment, which nobody should destroy because you are not comfortable with some policies. But in terms of Kenya airing out those Gen Zs, whatever name you called them, I think that was a very good tool in terms of democracy. And I hope, and I'm noticing, I think your government responded. They responded to some of the issues. And I think in future they will be very careful when they are making policies so that the policies are pro-people. The Gen Zs were talking about employment. Hopefully, the government is doing policy shifts so that they can expand. Because, employment is about expanding the economy. A small economy cannot employ anyone. So government might think about what they must touch on so that these young people, they are employed.
Right.
That issue is not only in Kenya. The whole of Africa, we have the youngest population globally. So we need to think about what to do in terms of skilling. We have so many people that have degrees, but they are not skilled. It's a difference between going to and get a degree and being skilled. So we should prioritize studies that skill, that empower the youth with skills, not just putting on a gown and a wood and then you think you have graduated. And that is the work of government. Put up skills centers, empower these youth so that they can go and innovate. Establish innovation centers all over Kenya, all over Uganda, so that the youth, they get a belonging to the economy.
Right.
When we don't do that, quite often we will see the youth on the street, and it is detrimental.